distance.
It's a different year, of course, as far as politics go. Nothing is untouched. So this is really one of the only election night parties in the state here at the Renaissance Hotel in Westerville. This is where Republicans will watch the results come in. Democrats will be live online virtually at 9 o'clock, and we'll join them then.
All right, Jeff Reddick, live for us. Thank you, Jeff. This is not just about the presidential race tonight. State politics, of course, could see a big shift if things go well for Democrats tonight.
We'll go now to Megan O'Rourke, who's standing by in Cincinnati for us.
Disbalance, unbalance of power in Ohio. And so what we've got right now in the Ohio House is a 61 to 38 advantage for Republicans. It would take just 2 seats flipping for the Democrats to break a supermajority for Republicans. And it would take, of course, a much larger shift, 12 seats, to be able to flip seats from Republican to Democrat, to flip power in the House from Republicans to Democrats. So that may not happen, but Democrats are reasonably certain that they'll flip seats and break the supermajority Republicans hold in the Ohio House.
All right, Jeff, thank you. Now, also tonight, Dayton voters awaiting the results of the 10th congressional seat. Longtime incumbent Republican U.S. Representative Mike Turner faces newcomer Democrat Desiree Timms. Megan O'Rourke joining us now with more details. Megan, what are you hearing?
Well, that's right. In addition to the race for the White House, another race that we are closely monitoring here in Dayton is the balance of power in Congress, specifically District 10. As you mentioned, that district covers Montgomery, Greene, and Fayette counties. Incumbent Republican Representative Mike Turner has held that office since 2003. He's a former mayor of Dayton, and in Congress, he's on the House Intelligence Committee and is a subcommittee chairman on the House Armed Services Committee. Now, his Democratic opponent is Desiree Timms. She's a former Capitol Hill staffer, having worked for Senator Sherrod Brown. Also, while working in D.C., she was elected president of the Senate Black Legislative Staff Caucus. Timms has received endorsements from former President Obama as well as the Biden-Harris campaign. Now, again, results just starting to come in, so this is still very early, but right now, Timms is ahead. It's showing 52% to 47% for Turner. That's with just over 183,000 votes reporting.
Megan, voters turning out in huge numbers across the state today. Were there any issues at polling locations today in the Dayton area?
Now, all in all, we're hearing that things went pretty smoothly. There were a few minor hiccups throughout the Miami Valley. We do know that there were some issues with some electronic voting machines at a polling location in Greene County. We're told voters there had to switch to paper ballots for a short time until those electronic machines were repaired. At that point, everything was back up and running, and we're told that went relatively smoothly. There was also an accident. This was at a polling location in Miami County. An SUV actually ran into that polling location. However, there was only minor damage to the building, no injuries reported, so we're told voting was not interrupted. Back to you.
Megan O'Rourke, live for us. Thank you. Now, the first polls are now closed.
Our chief political correspondent, Scott Thuman, tracking the late-breaking developments for us tonight from Capitol Hill.
Election night results getting off to a quick start. Early wins for President Trump in Kentucky and Joe Biden in Vermont. Not big surprises. But now it starts to get really fun as we take a look at some of the big states where the polls are closing. Florida, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and they're nail biters, every one of them. Take a look at Florida, for example. This is a state that President Trump won last time around by 1.2%. Before that, President Obama won it by 0.9%. Could come down to the wire. Always an indicator of what's going on in the Southeast. Georgia is another one. President Trump won that by 5 points last time around, but the margins are shrinking for Republicans. It's been a stronghold of theirs with a couple of exceptions since 1972. Can they hold on to it? So now we look ahead. What about big states that are still prizes and could be an indicator for the rest of the country, like Ohio? Republicans always say you don't win the White House without winning Ohio. It's a state that he flipped from President Obama last time around. This time, Joe Biden thinks he can flip it back. We'll have complete coverage for you throughout the night with these updates as more results come in. I'm Scott Thuman. Now back to you.
Scott, thank you. And we're also keeping a close eye on other races in our state that are generating interest.
Yeah, Walter Randolph right now, rather Walter Smith Randolph, excuse me, joining us from our sister station in Cincinnati. So, Walter, what are some of the big decisions that Cincinnati voters face today?
Well, today, really, Cincinnati is focusing on Ohio's 1st Congressional District and Ohio's 2nd Congressional District. In Ohio's 1st Congressional District, you have Steve Chabot. He's the incumbent Republican. He is being taken on by Kate Schroeder. She's a newcomer. She's never held office before. Now, Steve Chabot, he has been serving in Congress for about 24 years. I got to tell you that some early voting results have come in from Warren County, and in Warren County, Democratic strategists said that for Kate Schroeder to win, she would need about 35% of the vote in Warren County, and then she could get Hamilton County because it leans more blue. She right now is at 38% in Warren County, so things are looking good for Kate Schroeder. It could be an interesting night. In the 2nd Congressional District, you have Brad Winstrup, who is an incumbent Republican. He's being taken on by Jamie Castle. She is also a newcomer. Right now, Brad Winstrup has been polling high in that race in Ohio's 2nd Congressional District. Bob and Stacia?
All right, Walter Smith Randolph tonight for us from Cincinnati. Thank you, Walter. As we mentioned earlier, this is a monumental election and already one that's making history.
To give us more insight into what's at stake tonight, we're joined by political analyst Herb Asher via Zoom. Herb, good evening to you.
Good evening to you.
What's the sense you're getting at this point?
It's an impressive turnout throughout the nation. It's very clear that citizens are engaged. It's also clear that there'll be many states that will be decided by a margin of less than 1%. Early in the evening, certainly I think we'll be looking, how does Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin go? Because those were the 3 states that Trump carried that actually broke the Democrats' blue wall. I think most people anticipate that Wisconsin and Michigan are returning to the Democrats this year, but Pennsylvania is the battleground. And I think many people believe that Trump needs to win Pennsylvania if he loses Michigan and Wisconsin. If Democrats can win Ohio or Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, they'll be competitive in all of those. That basically ends Trump's prospects of reelection. But if all those close states wind up going Republican, so Ohio goes narrowly Republican and Florida and Georgia, et cetera, then in fact the focus will indeed be on Pennsylvania, and that will probably determine who the next president is. But if the states break a little differently, the Democrats could have an electoral college landslide.
Well, so a lot of focus on Pennsylvania. I mean, we've seen a lot of visits there recently, but Ohio really is known for being an indicator state. So at this point, we've picked the winning presidential candidate in every election since 1964, the longest streak of any state. So at this point, do you think that streak continues, and how important is Ohio at this point?
Well, it's interesting because a year ago, a lot of the commentators in Washington were not talking about Ohio as being a pivotal state or a battleground state or a swing state. And they were saying that because Donald Trump won in 2016 by a large margin, 8 percentage points. And in 2018, the Republicans swept all of the statewide offices. And of course, the Republicans dominate the legislature and all that. And so a lot of people were saying, well, Ohio is no longer a swing state. It's not purple. It's now moving red, or at least pink. And that sort of changed about a month or 2 ago when, in fact, we saw polls showing that the margin between Trump and Biden was very narrow. And so we then got re-elevated back to a swing state. And my guess is we're going to have results tonight that will say, yeah, Ohio is a battleground in presidential races once again. And should Biden win, that will reinforce that. But even a close victory by Trump will really suggest, okay, there's more strength for Democrats than the commentators had thought. And one last point, usually when you look at states like Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, I call those the Big Ten states in part, it's hardest for the Democrats to win Ohio for a whole variety of reasons. It's just a more Republican state than the others. And if Democrats can be competitive in Ohio, that probably suggests they're even stronger in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Minnesota.
Professor Asher, you have seen a lot of elections in your day. What about this one stands out for you?
Well, one thing that stands out, and I'll try to say this nicely, is I have never seen a candidate, and certainly never seen an incumbent president, who throughout the campaign was doing his best to undermine the integrity of the election system, talking about fraud, rigged elections, and things like that, saying that I might not accept the results. That is not the way we did it in the past. Most candidates, winners or losers, had a certain dignity to them. So the president really has increased the tension, if you will. And so I don't think I've ever seen an election where people are so worried about what's going to happen the day after. Is there going to be violence or riots or whatever? I don't think so. And I think Election Day is coming off reasonably well. But that's the one thing I don't think I've ever seen, at least in my lifetime.
Well, you're a busy man. The calls are coming in. We'll let you go. Thanks so much for your time tonight, Professor Asher.
I am sorry for that.
No.
Not at all. We all do. OSU Professor Herb Asher. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Well, and right now ballots are on their way to be counted in Franklin County and around the state. Steve
Levine outside the Board of Elections, keeping an eye out for those ballots and their arrival. Steve?
Yeah, Franklin County right now is like every other county in Ohio. Let me show you what's going on right now. You can see the lanes are ready, the security is ready, and you can see in the back cars starting to show up with those very important ballots. This is the third vehicle that showed up. Cars started about 10, 15 minutes ago, and inside that vehicle is actually a representative from the Democratic and the Republican Party, where they will be arriving and they will be going through the garage right now, where they will be giving the workers inside. And you can hear lots of cheers when they go through, welcoming these very tired poll workers who have been on the job since around 5:30 this morning when they showed up at the polls. Now, what's going to happen now is you see those big bins. They will go up to the car. They will put all the equipment inside, and they will have those very important tabulation cards, which they will take in and start using to tabulate. As I said, it takes about an hour to close down the polling places, and here you see again, we can see right down the lane the steady stream of cars delivering those very important vote counts. And because of the coronavirus, I can tell you things are a little bit different. You can see everybody wearing their mask. That includes the sheriff's office, all the workers, and the Democratic and Republican Party representatives in each car. Because, as I said, there has to be a representative from the Democratic and the Republican Party to drop off these votes. And they've been told, I talked with one of them and said, you can be in the car. If you don't want to be in the car, you have to be spread apart as far as you can because rules require you to be in that car. As I said, that's the third or fourth car. The parade of politics expected to go on throughout the evening, and we'll be here to show it all to you guys.
Democracy in action right there on live television. Thank you very much, Steve. Police reform has been a hot topic for most of the year in Columbus, certainly, and the mayor has said that issue 2 on the ballot could be a huge step toward his reforms. During weeks of protests in Columbus earlier this year, people demanded police reform, and one of those demands was a civilian review board. Tara Morgan has been following us since the beginning tonight. Big issue on the ballot, Tara.
a huge issue on the ballot. This is a charter amendment, so this could be history making for the city of Columbus. Mayor Ginther expects a big win tonight. He has talked about how much support he has had since the summer when he seated that work group to develop this civilian review board. The FOP says there wasn't enough information out there for voters to digest before they went to the polls. We heard a lot of talk about this civilian review board. This one would have subpoena power since those summer protests. And the mayor continues to point out that this was a recommendation by the Columbus Community Safety Advisory Commission, which put out its report back in January. Mayor Ginther says this is the kind of change that people have demanded. The FOP wants to make sure that things are done fairly. The FOP president says even if it passes tonight, it still needs to go up for negotiation with the FOP as their contract ends in early December. Back to you.
Well, Tara, what sort of details have been made available about this board?
Well, the working group that I had mentioned, they've been meeting virtually. They've met 5 times so far since early August, and their next meeting will be November 10th. Now, if you watch these virtual meetings, you heard how they're hovering around 7 to 11 members to be on this board. They want these board members possibly appointed and that they could serve 2 4-year terms. They've also talked about the price point and how much other cities around the country have paid out for these boards, and that could be in the tens to thousands of dollars to millions of dollars, depending on the staffing that you have, not just for the board, but the Inspector General office as well.
Cost may be a sticking point. Any other sticking points come to mind?
Well, Baker Hostetler, the law firm who does the negotiations with the FOP, they were talking to the working group that is working to develop this board that there would be significant hurdles with some of the language in the FOP contract. And the examples that they gave, over 6 or 7 articles that might be contentious points, would be discipline, grievance procedures, and protecting officers during investigations. Of course, we will hear from the mayor after the results come in tonight. We will also hear from the FOP, depending on what happens tonight. Back to you.
Tara Morgan, following issue 2 every step of the way now. Let's check back in with our team in Cincinnati. Senator Mitch McConnell, top Republican in the U.S. Senate, is fending off a challenge from the northern Kentucky native Amy McGrath. James Pilcher is keeping a close eye on this from us tonight from Cincinnati. Good evening, James.
Good evening, Bob. Actually, the Associated Press has already called this race for the U.S. Senate Majority Mitch McConnell, the Republican out of Louisville. So right now, we've got 63% of precincts reporting, and McConnell has 56% of the vote to 41% for McGrath. Now, this battle had pit the venerable McConnell against the up-and-coming Democratic star Amy McGrath. He is looking to see, he actually now won his 7th term in the Senate. He took over as majority leader 5 years ago. Now, he's made some controversial moves over the years. He first stopped the vote on President Barack Obama's Supreme Court nominee. Then he pushed through his other, more conservative judge to the High Court just a few weeks ago, just a week or 2 before the election. McConnell has also been at the center of Washington's response to the pandemic. He did help get the CARES Act through in the spring, but many blamed him for the failure of a second round of stimulus this fall. He portrays himself as the voice of the Midwest among congressional leadership and says he's been able to get Kentucky much more funding than it would have received. We did receive a statement earlier from Grath saying she thanks all her supporters and will look forward to her next move. Live in Covington.
James Pilcher reporting tonight from Cincinnati.
Vote 2020. Your voice, your future on ABC6 starts now.
Well, the polls will be closed for about an hour in Ohio. Ballots are ready to be counted.
Let's check on the races that we are following in Columbus. Democratic Representative Joyce Beatty challenged for the 3rd Congressional District by Republican Mark Richardson. This race has been called for Joyce Beatty.
Also being challenged tonight, Franklin County Prosecutor Ron O'Brien, Democrat Gary Tyack running against O'Brien. And right now, Tyack with a sizable lead, 62 to 36% over Ron O'Brien.
We want to go now to Jeff Reddick joining us live from the Republican Watch Party happening in downtown. What can you tell us, Jeff?
Well, there hasn't been much action here yet. Just as the polls closed at 7:30, Republican Chairwoman Jane Timken came into the room. Just let us know the polls were closing. She'd be talking to us since after that, but we haven't seen her since then, rather, is what I meant to say. Still, we're following the results closely here from the state of Ohio in the presidential election. It remains wide, but of course we're still waiting for a lot of votes to come in, specifically in Ohio right now. Joe Biden leading President Trump 55 to 44%, but this has actually shrunk down from early on. We were looking at a 66 to 33% advantage, then a 60% to around 40%, 38% advantage. So it's really tightening up as more votes come in. We're of course getting those precinct reports that will be coming in now, the individual in-person votes from today. And that's when we're going to see, we think, things really tighten up and reflect the polls, which are a toss-up for Ohio. So that's what we're seeing right now. We'll let you know when we hear from Republicans here. Democrats have a virtual election night party tonight. That begins at 9 o'clock on Zoom. We'll have that for you later as well. Guys?
Jeff, thank you. Let's check in now with reporter Steve Levine following your ballot's path.
And it seems the ballots are starting to arrive, Steve.
Okay, looks like we're having some trouble with Steve, but we did see that the ballots were starting to show up, and so we will continue to follow that closely and update you as more ballots arrive.
Yeah. Jeff Reddick back out at the Westerville headquarters for the Republican Party right now. Jeff, curious about just how many folks are out there. Are they starting to gather?
So this party is actually split between several conference rooms and ballrooms here at the Renaissance Hotel in Westerville. I know across the hall is where we've heard some applause when Republican Chairwoman Jane Timken spoke from this room. It was video fed into the room across the hallway from us, and she was able to get some applause that we could hear through an open doorway. We do understand that there are several rooms. I know there's another media room to my right, so you're probably looking at several hundred, maybe 1,000 or so people inside the various rooms here at the Renaissance. But again, all spread out. You can see behind me that there are even some plexiglass dividers in between the various reporters here in the media room where I am. And we've been, spaced or protected that way for most of the evening. We don't know what's going on in other rooms as we're kind of sequestered here. We will get video feeds from other rooms, or we'll get podium speeches from here. Even victory speeches might come through via video feed tonight, and we'll certainly wait on those and bring them to you as we can. Democrats, meanwhile, are expected to have a lot of people from all over the state joining into that virtual video call led by the Ohio Democratic Chairman, David Pepper. We do expect Joyce Beatty will be there. We've got a call scheduled with the city attorney, Zach Klein, here in Columbus as well. So Democrats certainly fanning out over the online airwaves, I suppose you'd say, as best as they can and trying to get their message out, too. Going to be an interesting night, a really unique night of Ohio politics for us here, like nothing we've ever seen before.
Yeah, but thanks, Jeff. Anticipating a Zoom call victory speech here, well, for Joyce Beatty, for example, here coming up around about 9 o'clock. She, as Stacia mentioned, her race has been called.
Our team coverage of the 2020 election continues. We have more results from Columbus and Franklin County in a few moments. Stay with us.
Vote 2020. Your voice, your future on Fox 28 starts now.
Voters will decide on tax levies for 2 Central Ohio school districts. Voters in Delaware will have the option to renew a tax levy for Delaware City Schools that's been in place for a decade. And Gahanna Jefferson Public Schools placed issue 22 on the ballot to fund the construction and replacement of its current high school. Scoring Our Schools' Lisa Rontala joining us now with more details. Lisa, what are you hearing?
Itself tonight, which did concern the superintendent. I'm standing right in front of the district's current high school. As you said, that levy would pay for its destruction, but also pay for the construction and replacement of this high school. And this is also the very spot where we saw many teachers take to the picket line, leaving their classrooms just weeks ago. Now, teachers then told me that they did support the levy that would cost someone with a $100,000 home an extra $374 a year in property taxes. The district just passed its last levy in 2018. This year, groups formed on Facebook to block it. The superintendent of Gahanna Jefferson Schools said they do expect 700 more kids to enter this growing district in the next 5 years, and it is already over capacity. As it stands right now, Gahanna Lincoln is the 9th largest high school in the state.
During class change, it's really hard for students to get from one side of the building to the other. Often through no fault of their own, they're late for class because our hallways are crowded. We don't have the capacity to feed all of our kids at lunchtime at once.
And the superintendent tells me the elementary schools, the middle schools, also over capacity. This levy would renovate and add 44 more classrooms to those schools if it passes tonight.
Lisa, what happens if this levy does not pass?
You know, I did ask the superintendent that just a few moments ago. He said, look, I understand this is not an ideal year to pass a school levy. You're dealing with COVID-19, you're dealing with unemployment, and for Gahanna voters, they are dealing with that teacher strike, that 4-day teacher strike just a few weeks ago. He said if it does not pass tonight, he can't just turn around and put a levy on the next ballot. He says he's really going to have to survey the community and find out their wants and their needs. But we do have to sit and wait because some voters said they come out and pass a levy no matter what because a kid's education just means that much to them. So we'll see what happens next. But for now, reporting live in Gahanna, I'm Lisa Rontala for ABC 6 News.
All right, Lisa, we will check back in with you. Thank you. And developing tonight in Delaware County, Election Day didn't come without controversy there.
Now, you'll recall about 1,000 voters received duplicate mail-in ballots last month when the early voting began. There was an error at the county's Board of Elections. Well, Kaylee Gunderson is there now at the close of Election Day itself. And how did things go and how are things going tonight, Kaylee?
So, Stacia, Bob, no issues tonight, and they are just now starting to get some of the precincts dropping off their boxes tonight. They've got 48 polling locations throughout the county, 165 precincts they've got to get in. So what you're seeing here is just the first car. So there's still a lot left, to get in tonight. And of course, this is a big county, so it could take time for all of those precincts to get in, having quite a ways to drive tonight. But one of the races, we will be keeping an eye on tonight is the race between Troy Boulderson and Elena Shearer for that 12th congressional district. We know that the early in-person voting numbers are in, which are showing them very close. Troy Boulderson just barely ahead, but of course that's just one section of the vote tonight. Obviously we have still the election day votes and of course the absentee ballots to count. So we still, have a lot that we're waiting to see here tonight, but we are going to have some more information coming up for those early in-person numbers as we are getting those in now, and we'll bring those to you, of course, when we get those numbers in tonight. For now, back to you.
Kaylee Gunderson tonight in Delaware County. Thank you, Kaylee. We'll go east to Licking County now. ABC 6's Tom Bosco in Newark, following a couple of key races out that way, Tom, and checking in on the situation that voters had today. How did it go?
It went pretty smoothly there. A lot of people, more than 50% voting early in Licking County. Right now, I'm at the Doubletree Hotel in downtown Newark. 2 years ago, I was here as Troy Balderson won the race to finish Pat Tiberi's term in Congress. And in this COVID age, we are not inside the Doubletree Hotel tonight, but Troy Balderson is inside the Doubletree Hotel watching results, waiting to hear whether he's won another term here. He's expected to have a party inside, smaller, just of some staff, family, and a few supporters, but no press inside due to COVID. Now, the 12th Congressional District encompasses all of Licking County, as well as all of Delaware County and parts of Franklin and Morrow counties as well. Balderson running for that second term. He narrowly edged Democrat Danny O'Connor 2 years ago. In fact, he did it twice, once in that election to fill Tiberi's seat, then again in the general election. Now, Elena Shearer of Delaware County is a former journalist and small business owner. She has run a visible campaign hoping for an upset, but worries the district is gerrymandered in Republicans' favor. Libertarian John Stewart of Gahanna also in the race. Now, some quick results with the early vote counted. Shearer took 70% of the early vote in Franklin County, but here in Licking County, Balderson outpaces her almost 60-40 in the early vote, and as Kaylee mentioned, in Delaware County, Balderson holding an edge, but it is less than 1% among those early voters. But this is the race we are watching tonight, and we hope to hear from those candidates later. Probably not in person, more than likely over virtual means like Zoom or another video conferencing system. Reporting live in Newark, I'm Tom Bosco, ABC 6 News.
Tom, thank you. We want to check back in now with Megan O'Rourke in Dayton. Megan, talk to us about the candidates running for Congressional District 10.
Well, Stacia, of course, District 10 covers Montgomery, Greene, and Fayette counties. This is a very close race that we've been watching throughout the night. Republican Representative Mike Turner has held that office since 2003, though. Tonight, he's being challenged by Democrat Desiree Tims, who's been endorsed by former President Obama, as well as the Biden-Harris campaign. Now, we caught up with the candidates earlier today, both addressing how close they're expecting this race to be.
I think the state of Ohio is incredibly ready for this election. I think we'll have information as to what has happened in Ohio already by the end of the evening. We may have to wait for some states who are not as prepared as Ohio, but I think our state has done an excellent job making certain that we're prepared and that we can get the results to the American people.
I think people have had enough of Washington politicians, people who have been in office for decades like Congressman Turner, and they want to make sure they have an opportunity to have their voices heard. Too much has been focused on the 1%, the millionaires and billionaires on Wall Street in New York, and not the people on 3rd Street in Salem.
Now, I've been watching the results come in, and an update just came in a minute ago. Right now, Tims is actually leading 52% of the vote. All the results, again, still coming in. This is very early, with just 220,000 votes being reported. Both candidates opting out of an election party tonight. Tims says that she will address voters tonight on Facebook Live. Congressman Turner, meanwhile, watching those votes come in downtown Dayton from the Schuster Center. We're going to keep a close eye, and we'll keep you posted. For now, though, back to you.
Megan O'Rourke tonight in Dayton. Thank you, Megan. And around the state we go here. Our team in Steubenville now following a couple of key races in the Ohio Valley.
Ohio's 30th Senate District up for grabs, as well as the 96th Congressional District. Want to go now to Rich Pierce joining us with a look at these other key decisions being made as well. Rich.
Hello there and good evening. Voting has been very active in the eastern part of Ohio. To a county, early voting records are being smashed, but a lot of voters waited until today. Here's some video of lines that we saw today, not unlike years past. So we do expect overall records to be broken in many places, if not everywhere, in the Ohio Valley region of the state. This area of the state is Trump country. In some counties, the president beat Hillary Clinton by as much as 30 points in 2016. In fact, according to the Republican Party, the 6th Congressional District had the largest swing of Democrat to Republican Republican voters in the nation. And speaking of that 6th congressional district, Congressman Bill Johnson is expected to easily retain his seat in the House. You see it there. Democrat challenger Shauna Roberts did not run an active campaign. In fact, she took to Twitter 2 weeks ago to apologize to her supporters about that inactive campaign. And at the state level, it will be interesting to watch this race, the 96th House district. It had been held by Democrat Jack Serra for a decade, but his time is up. He's not running. That seat will be won by either Republican Ron Ferguson, Democrat Richard Olivito, or Libertarian Oscar Herrera. And you see Ron Ferguson with a big lead right there. And should that red wave continue and this be unchanged, that's a seat that actually flips in the state of Ohio. Now back to the presidential side. Republican Party leaders in the area are expecting a result similar to 2016, maybe even greater of a victory for the president, receiving somewhere in the 70% range of the vote. And that's a look at Jefferson County. And it's interesting to note that in Jefferson County and Belmont County, those are two of the most populous counties in our region, the Ohio Valley. They historically voted Democrat in presidential races since the time of Richard Nixon. It flipped, but by a small margin back in 2012, and then in a big way in 2016. But so far, neither of those counties are matching quite as big of a win for President Trump as we head on into the evening. But of course, that could change. It is still early. Democrats tell us they are optimistic in at least putting a dent in things, maybe not winning the counties, but certainly making it closer. And with things in Ohio polling the way they are, and especially the count going the way it is right now, a few percentage points here and there could certainly mean all the difference. Reporting in Steubenville, Ohio, I'm Rich Pierce. Let's send it back to you.
All right, Rich, thank you. Now, he was talking about flipping those seats in the House. We've been talking a lot about how Republicans hold a 61-38 majority in the Ohio House, and House Democrats have been hoping to flip 12 seats. We were talking to the campaign manager, Ari Alex. 12 seats that would have given the Democrats a 50-49 majority. So we will see what happens now.
At least take the 3 flips and break the supermajority right now that Republicans have. That's a plan B, goal 2 for the Democrats tonight.
We also have reporters following the presidential candidates as well.
Atra El-Nashar in Wilmington, Delaware with the Biden camp for us tonight. Atra, I imagine they're just getting settled in here for a very long night.
Absolutely. In fact, we don't believe Joe Biden is actually here outside or at the Chase Center yet or in a nearby hotel because we know that he's watching the returns at his home here in Wilmington with his family, as a lot of families are right now, surrounded around the TV, waiting to see what happens. We know, though, that the mood of the Biden campaign right now is cautiously optimistic. They do not want to see a repeat of 2016, where Democrats were so incredibly confident that they would win the presidential election, and the rest is history. Joe Biden, he's admitted himself, I've heard it from some sources, that he is superstitious, especially on election day, so he doesn't like anyone talking about a victory around him until it's absolutely certain. And because of that, we may not hear from Joe Biden until we have more of an idea of who's on track to win this race. So you're right, it may be a very long night. It could be a long couple of days, but we do expect to hear from Joe Biden either in the late hours of tonight, possibly early morning on Wednesday.
Atra El-Nashar tonight for us in Wilmington, Delaware. Thanks, Atra. We'll check back with you later here. And voters in Toledo will be weighing in on some larger issues, including an income tax renewal for safety services. There is an at-large city council seat open and the race for Lucas County Sheriff. Jay Hanna joining us now with more on those key races in Toledo. Jay?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We got a couple big races here in Lucas County. Now, Lucas County is actually a pretty Democratic area of Ohio, but here locally, the Toledo City Council race has seemed to be the big thing that people are watching. As many people know, in the state of Ohio, Toledo has had some issues with their city council members. 4 of them, Yvonne Harper, Gary Johnson, Larry Sykes, and Tyrone Riley, all facing federal charges of bribery as they were arrested by the FBI this summer. this race here specifically, there's only one seat up for grabs. Those 4 seats have been filled. It is actually Katie Moline. We're here at the Attic on Adams in downtown Toledo, I should say uptown Toledo. Katie Moline hosting a watch party for her race. She is going against Republican Tony Dia. Now, if you guys all remember, his son, Tony Dia's son, Anthony Dia, was shot and killed on July 4th while responding to an incident at a Home Depot in North Toledo. Tony Dia says it inspired him to run and work for the people of the city of Toledo. So we'll know a little bit more as far as that race goes. Early voting shows Katie Moline with a pretty big lead, but we'll know a lot more here in the coming hours here in Lucas County. Now, also issue 3 and 4. Wade Kapscavage, the mayor of Toledo, is trying to bring in a income tax for the city of Toledo. Now, the issue 3 is a renewal, which would simply fund the fire department, the police department. If it does not pass, there would be about 300 people, 300 firefighters, 300 police officers that would have to be laid off, according to the mayor. Issue 4, however, is an actual income tax additional to it. It's a 0.25% income tax that would be added in. And he is trying to push that for the voters. That is issue 4. So in Lucas County, not a whole lot else going on, just a couple of other tax renewals. One tax coming from Metro Parks Toledo, that's issue 17. But other than that, that's all that's going here in Lucas County. Be sure to stay tuned for all the latest results up here. Reporting live in Toledo, I'm Jay Hanna, NBC 24 News.
Jay, thank you. The race for Ohio's 3rd congressional district has been called tonight for incumbent Democrat Joyce Beatty. Haley Nelson joins us live tonight. Now, Haley, you expect to hear from her soon. What are you hearing?
In just a little bit, maybe in 10 or 15 minutes, about these results. But of course, she's the projected winner for the 3rd district, which covers much of the Columbus area. Now, she was highly favored in this race, certainly, and these projected results were called very early in her favor. Now, just a little bit ago, I spoke with her Republican opponent, Mark Richardson, about these results, about his message to the community. I want to move to the side. There's actually a GOP watch party going on right now. This is the Park Street Cantina in the Arena District area. He and other Republican supporters are here watching results. They have all the TVs on inside as they come in. I asked him about these results so far. Take a listen to what he has to say.
Well, I think we need to wait till the vote comes in, number one. But it has been an amazing race. You know, Joyce has shown a lot of civility in this race. You know, hats off to her and her campaign. We both have had a very civil campaign.
And the veteran and first-time candidate says he wants the district and the entire community to unite. He's thanking all the folks in the district, appreciates the questions and discussions along the way. And I asked him, he says he does have sights on more political activity in the future. Now, we are expecting to speak with Joyce Beatty around 8:55, 9 o'clock tonight. I'll bring you updates as we speak with her. But like I said, she was very favored in this race. And of course, she's been the face of this district for many, many years. Live in the Arena District, I'm Haley Nelson.
Haley, thanks so much. We've been told to make sure we pack our patience along here on election night tonight. Might be a while before we actually knows who wins the big races tonight.
Election night 2020 might stretch into election week. Election law analyst Stephen Huffner joins us now with an in-depth look at what we can expect. So what can we expect, Stephen?
Well, we're going to have to wait to see a little bit longer what happens in some of these most contested battleground states, with Pennsylvania being the most critical of those. I know that some people were wondering whether we'd have an early sense of things tonight, and that would have depended on states like Florida or Georgia or North Carolina clearly going for Biden, and that doesn't seem to be what's happening in those states. So it's going to come down to Pennsylvania, maybe Ohio, and Arizona also could make quite a difference to the outcome. And of course, the problem is Pennsylvania is not going to be able to count the vast quantity of the mail-in ballots until after today. That's just how their state law works.
And if an election result isn't certain, what could help decide the presidency?
Well, it's always been the case that we don't have official results until some days or weeks after. Again, that varies from state to state. But if it's incredibly close, what will go on is, in addition to double checking all of the results, there will be some contests about whether certain subsets of absentee ballots or provisional ballots are eligible to be counted. And maybe court challenges even about ballots that have already been counted that someone might argue should not have been counted. So we will be off to the races, if you will, if it proves to be a very close race in a particular state that is the tipping point state.
How real are those concerns about voter fraud?
Well, concerns about voter fraud are, I think, largely overdrawn. The number of instances of provable voter fraud engaged in by an individual voter are vanishingly small. Now, that's not to say that we should ignore the risk. On the contrary, we want to make sure that we continue to design and use processes that reduce to almost zero the chance that there could be fraud. We have occasionally seen problems where some insider or someone who gains access to a large quantity of ballots has tried to manipulate them. We saw that as recently as 2018 in the North Carolina congressional race, where someone was collecting and then manipulating a whole set of absentee ballots. So we are vigilant to prevent that from happening, and it's quite rare that it does happen.
Stephen Huffner joining us live tonight. Thank you for your insight.
The Trump campaign says that they're confident people voting today will get them to the finish line for a second term.
St. Clair National correspondent James Rosen is at the White House with a look at how President Trump is spending the final hours of the campaign. So, James, have you heard from the president tonight? What is he having to say so far?
Stacia and Rob, good evening from the White House, where we understand President Trump is taking in the election returns inside the executive mansion. We did hear from him much earlier today around 10 a.m. Eastern Time when he made what you might consider his final stop of this campaign cycle, a short trip across the Potomac River to Northern Virginia, specifically to Arlington, and to his own campaign headquarters. And there he thanked his supporters and volunteers, spoke about what an honor it has been to serve as President of the United States, directed, as you might imagine, a few barbs at the news media, and mounted, in response to one reporter's question, his final defense of his handling of the coronavirus, in essence telling reporters that he thinks he did all the right things except perhaps on the public relations angle of those policies. Now, I've been speaking with senior Trump campaign aides throughout the day and just in recent hours, and they are projecting what they call calm confidence that things are breaking for the president as he needed them to tonight. They were counting on heavy Trump turnout on Election Day to make up for the massive advantage that former Vice President Biden had amassed in the early pre-Election Day balloting. And I had one campaign aide tell me today, we've been looking for bad news across the country in various counties, and so far we're not seeing it. To the contrary, the Trump campaign believes they have won Florida, with some 85+% of the votes there having come in, and the Panhandle, which is Trump country, being the last remaining part that they were expecting to hear from. We have been hearing from the Trump campaign that if things go as they expect, with a massive turnout for the president on Election Day, with his voters being more predisposed to vote on Election Day than the Democratic voters who were more predisposed to vote early, that they were projecting that in the state of Ohio, President Trump, amongst all the votes cast on Election Day, would come out with a margin of victory in those votes over the former vice president of 400,000. We'll see if that pans out. But so far, the Trump campaign thinks they're going to be outperforming the president's numbers in 2016 with some key groups, including African Americans and Latinos. So calm confidence from the Trump campaign so far tonight. Obviously, we have a lot left to learn about this election. Rob and Stacia.
Those are interesting facts you're giving us there, James. Where is the president actually watching the returns?
We believe he's inside the executive mansion. We did see the First Lady, Melania Trump, cast her ballot at a polling station in Palm Beach, Florida earlier today. She offered a brief wave to onlookers as she went in, and presumably, Rob and Stacia, we can say safely that we know for whom the First Lady voted.
Pretty certain about that one for sure. James Rosen tonight from the White House. Thanks so much, James. And Rodney Donegan also has a very busy night ahead for us right now, tracking a lot of big races for us tonight, specifically the State House itself. One of them really shrouded in controversy, Rodney, and that, of course, the seat belonging to Representative Larry Householder, who is right now embroiled in scandal and yet bidding for yet another term at the State House.
Well, that's exactly right, Bob, and I've been tracking the numbers with the Secretary of State's office, and at this point, that race has not been called, but Larry Householder has 100% of the votes. There were several write-in candidates hoping to make a mark, but it doesn't appear that that's going to happen. Now, as of right now, that means despite all of the recent controversy and the charges against him, he will more than likely keep that seat. The racketeering case against him cost him his position as Speaker of the House, and a conviction could land him in prison for 20 years. Despite it all, he's still got plenty of support in his district, including the endorsement of the Perry County Republican Party.
I'm a strong believer of innocent until proven guilty. Out of all the candidates out there, I think he is the #1 guy for the job.
All right, and another big race that we're following tonight, Franklin County Prosecutor Ron O'Brien is fighting to keep his position. Former appeals court judge Gary Tyack is hoping to come away with that win tonight in this race. And at this point, Gary Tyack has a wide lead with 62% of that vote. But again, it has not been called at this point. Of course, we'll have updates throughout the night on that race. As soon as we get information on the rest of them, we'll bring it to you as soon as possible. Bob and Sasha, back to you.
All right, Rodney Donegan reporting here for us tonight from the State House races. Still waiting for the returns to come in full flight for that one here. Steve Levine is monitoring the return of the ballots in Franklin County Board of Election here. I think we've got some pictures here. The vehicles have begun to show up from the various precincts here. See them all lined up there, dropping off the ballots, each vehicle with a Democrat and a Republican in as required by law. And they're dropping off each of the returns from the various precincts. A steady line of cars now returning the ballots in Franklin County.
And we've seen a lot of energy as these returns arrive, because once they arrive inside, you can hear the folks there inside who receive them cheering and just celebrating the end to this day. And of course, we are following the results very closely tonight. So that is a look there at your returns and your votes being counted.
We'll take a brief break here and return with our coverage in a moment.
Vote 2020. Your voice, your future on ABC6 starts now.
Vote 2020 happening right here in Central Ohio. We're following the races here and, of course, across the state as we wait to see what happens tonight.
All right, Jeff Reddick is standing by here tonight. Before we get to him, though, we'll look at U.S. House District 3. This congressional seat returns to Joyce Beatty handily tonight, the Democrat now elected to a 5th term in Congress.
And also being challenged tonight, Franklin County Prosecutor Ron O'Brien, Democrat Gary Tyack running against O'Brien. You can see right here we only have 2% of precincts reporting, and we will continue to follow these results closely.
Columbus residents also deciding whether to approve Issue 1. This is what's known as an opt-out green energy plan that promises to supply 100% of the city's power needs with renewable energy by 2023. And right now, 80% of the electorate is for Issue 2.
All right,
Issue
so
1.
At this point, we want to check in with Jeff Reddick, who joins us live in Westerville at the GOP watch party happening there. Jeff, what are you hearing from folks inside?
Yes, still nothing from Republicans here. They remain kind of sequestered across the hall from us, and we're in a media room here by ourselves. We have a podium back there, but they still haven't come to that podium to say anything in about the 90 minutes since the polls closed. What we do know is Ohio's numbers are still trending towards Joe Biden, but we are still waiting for most of the state's votes to come in. This number, 54% to Biden, 45% to Trump, is the latest we have. It represents about 3.2 million total votes. As you know, 3.4 million Ohioans voted earlier absentee, so we're approaching that number. Still waiting for a lot more votes to come in, and we expect this to really tighten as the night goes on. Guys?
Thanks for joining us here for our statewide look at election night 2020.
Vote 2020 continues right here. We hope you'll stay with us.